we get into the business of charges this class onwards, just like mass is an intrinsic property, we have another intrinsic property embedded in matter, which is charge. To define charge may not be too easy, and charge perhaps will not be known by its rudimentary description. But then, of course, we are more concerned about the effect that this intrinsic property produces and its properties. So properties along with the effect that it produces will really be our understanding of what a charge means. So nature in principle allows only one kind of mass to prevail. But in terms of charge, it shows you two kinds of charges. One, what you already know, is a positive charge and a negative charge. Those are only names given to certain kinds of charges, right? Doesn't mean that a positive charge is more than a negative charge. That's a meaningless proposition. But then one of the most important distinctions between charge and mass is the fact that, nature will offer mass of any quantity. You can think of 3.013 kilograms of mass, right? But it's not like you can have any amount of charge, any number that you can think, whether that amount of charge will be offered by nature or not. No. Charge, we then say, is quantized. And it occurs in integral multiples of what you witness as charge on an electron. Charge in an electron, as you know, is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulombs. And if E is the charge on an electron, all that you see is an integral multiple of the charge on an electron. Although, there are quantities, there are particles that have charges that are fractions of charge on an electron. They are quarks, but they are very unstable. They don't last and they don't live long. So we will not look upon that as a unit, right? Quarks can be 1/3 plus minus 1/3 plus minus 2/3 the charge on an electron, but we will ignore their presence because they don't have a life long enough for us to explore. The other very fundamental distinction between charge and mass is mass of a particle or mass of a body depends on the frame of reference, depends on the velocity that mass has. Mass is frame dependent. Mass is frame dependent, whereas charge is frame independent. We call this being relativistically invariant. Three kinds of effect that charges could produce. A charge at rest produces what's called an electric field. And exploration of electric field and its character falls within the jurisdiction of what's called electrostatics, which would be our current premise of discussion. Charges at rest produce an effect which is called electric field. It's a region in space where other charges can experience a force. It's a region in space surrounding that charge in which other charges can experience a force. There is a charge at rest. And then there are charges in uniform motion. And they produce not only an electric field, they also produce a magnetic field. They also produce a magnetic field. And then there are charges that are accelerated. These charges, in addition to producing electric field, EF is electric field, magnetic field, they also emit radiations, electromagnetic radiations. They emit radiations. One thing that you've been told ever since you were kids, that in order to charge a body, there are three principal ways in which a body could be charged. One is through rubbing. When you rub one body over another, there is heat generated at the interface and there is transfer of charge. One of the body is less capable of holding the electrons, which are charge carriers. The other one can hold charge, right? So it flows commensurate with that. There is charging by rubbing or friction, right? Then there is charging by induction. There is charging by induction where, if there is this body and there is another body which is charged, and I bring it in proximity to a neutral body. Neutral means no net charge. Then what happens is, on the nearer surface, a charge of opposite kind will get induced, and on the farther surface, the same kind of charge will remain. The net sum of this charge and this charge will be 0 because this was a neutral body. And then what is done is, so this negative charge will remain attracted to this positive charge. It's bounded to this positive charge, but this positive charge in a certain sense is free. If allowed, it can flow to the earth. Essentially, this is free charges, and Mother Earth will assimilate free. It will give them shelter. This negative charge is married to this plus, but this plus charge is unattended. So when connected to the earth, Mother Earth will assimilate free charge. And then once Mother Earth assimilates this free charge, and subsequent to this, I remove this. Right? Then this remains negatively charged. So that's charging by induction. And then there is charging by conduction. So when there are two charged bodies at different potentials, then charge flows from a region of higher potential to a region of lower potential, right? So these are three ways in which a body could be charged. So we'll not bother too much about all this because I almost assume that this is what you've been told about charges ever since your junior elementary textbooks introduced charge to you. Essentially, we start this journey with how two static charges interact with each other. How two static charges will interact with each other. So there is a charge Q1 and there is a charge Q2. And R is the separation between the two. Both could be positive charges, both could be negative charges. One of them could be positive, the other one could be negative. And a unit vector in this direction is, say, R cap. A unit vector in this direction is R cap, say. And the whole thing is kept in vacuum. The whole thing is kept in vacuum. Then these charges exert equal and opposite forces on each other along the line joining the two because of this property called charge, because of the property that they possess, that is charge. Now, the force experienced by two, say, force experienced by two Q2 because of Q1 is given by 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by r squared into r cap, where r cap is a unit vector from 1 to 2 as shown. Now, see, if Q1 and Q2 are both positive, they will repel each other. They will repel, or even if they were negative, this product would be positive and they will repel each other. So, which means if Q1 is repelling Q2, say if they were of the same sign, if Q1 and Q2 then would have been the same sign, then the direction of the force that two experiences would be along r cap, which is what you expected, right? So, this is a vector description of the force that two experiences from one, force that two experiences from one. See, this is the magnitude of the force. The direction of the force is given by r cap. Now, if Q1 and Q2 are of opposite signs, then this will become a negative number and this will be negative r cap. That means then its direction would be towards 1. Right now, if Q1 and Q2 are of the same sign, then its direction of this force is in this direction. Direction of the force is along r cap. And there is repulsion, which is what you expected. But if Q1 and Q2 were of opposite signs, this would be in a direction opposite to r cap and the force would be deemed attractive. So this anyways, Q1 and Q2 along with the signs, if you plug in, this will give you a generalized version of the force that two experiences because of one. And force that one experiences because of two would be minus F2, keeping in line with Newton's third law. Keeping in line with Newton's third law. Right. Now, suppose these charges, suppose these charges move under mutual interaction. Mutual interaction means forces that they exert on each other. Forces that they exert on each other. Then there is no external force acting on them. Then the principle that will be subscribed to is conservation of linear momentum. The linear momentum of the system will remain preserved if they are only moving under mutual interaction. That means in absence of any external force, they will subscribe to conservation of linear momentum. Suppose I fix Q1. Suppose I pin Q1 and I allow Q2 to move in a certain manner. Then no matter where Q2 is, if Q2 at some point of time is here, then the force that Q2 experiences will still be along the line joining Q1 and Q2. Its line of action will pass through Q1. Therefore, this force F2 will produce no torque about this point. That means angular momentum about this point must be conserved. Angular momentum about this point must be conserved because the torque of this force about Q1 must be 0. Therefore, angular momentum about this point must be conserved, right? So this is another principle which we apply very often, conservation of angular momentum. This number is a constant. 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught is a constant and its value is 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton meter squared per Coulomb squared. Its value is 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton meter squared per Coulomb squared. And this epsilon naught is called permittivity of vacuum. Permittivity of vacuum or free space. If the whole arrangement, instead of being kept in vacuum, was kept in some other medium, if the whole arrangement was kept in some other medium, say, then the permittivity of this medium will be different from permittivity of vacuum. Then the force, suppose this is R and this is R cap, then the force, let's say that two experiences is going to be 1 by 4 pi epsilon q1 q2 by R squared R cap, where epsilon is the permittivity of that medium. Epsilon is the permittivity of that medium. So epsilon is the permittivity of the medium. This epsilon divided by permittivity of vacuum, epsilon of the medium, permittivity of the medium divided by permittivity of vacuum is called relative permittivity of the medium. This epsilon R is called relative permittivity of the medium. Is called the relative permittivity of the medium, epsilon R. The permittivity of the medium divided by permittivity of vacuum is called epsilon R, the relative permittivity of the medium. So that's a very deep question, and it is impossible for me to answer this question right now. It's about, it only relates, as of now, all that I can tell you is it only relates to their interaction. Say, it's a constant which will be suggestive of the force that they will exert on each other. It's a property of the medium that we refer to as permittivity, which says that if two charges are kept in that medium, how they interact with each other is governed by this constant called epsilon. But what I've said is very frivolous. There is a lot more to it than this, but as of now, this is the best that I could have told you. So the epsilon of the medium is like epsilon naught into epsilon R. The epsilon of the medium is called epsilon naught into epsilon R. So this is like 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into epsilon R q1 q2 by R squared into R cap. Epsilon R for vacuum will be 1. Epsilon R for vacuum would be 1. For vacuum, the relative permittivity would be 1. And for all practical considerations, for air also we take relative permittivity to be roughly 1. Permittivity of vacuum and permittivity of air, they're very close to each other in value. So the relative permittivity of air for practical considerations is also taken to be 1. Then, you know, for metals and conductors, we'll see that this epsilon R is infinity. This epsilon R is going to be infinity. For water, it's roughly 81 and so on and so forth. I mean, don't bother. Wherever required, it will be given to you. These values will be given to you. Suppose two charges were kept in air. Right? And say the separation between them was R air. Right? R and air. And the same charges were kept in a medium. And the separation between them was Rm, R in the medium. Now, so this is air, this is some medium. This is some medium whose, say, relative permittivity is epsilon R, whose relative permittivity is epsilon R. Now, these two lengths are considered equivalent lengths if these two lengths Rn and Rm are considered equivalent lengths if the force that the two charges exert on each other in air is the same as the force that they exert on each other in the medium. That's when these two lengths are considered equivalent lengths. That means if two particles are separated by a distance Rm in that medium, then somebody would say, what is the equivalent length in air? Then this is the equivalent length in air, provided the force between the two charges in this case is the same as the force between the two charges in this case. That's when these two lengths are considered equivalent lengths. This is called the equivalent air length. This is called the equivalent air length, right? So in this case, the magnitude of the force between the two charges is going to be 1 by 4 pi epsilon into epsilon r, epsilon naught into epsilon r, q1 q2 by r squared. That's the magnitude of the force between r m squared. That's the magnitude of the force between the two charges, right? The magnitude of the force between the two charges in this case would be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 by this. When this is the equivalent air length, if this is the equivalent air length, then very clearly these two numbers must be equal, the forces must be equal. That means I can say 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 by r squared air is the same as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught epsilon r q1 q2 by rm squared. Yes or no? If these two are equivalent lengths, if this is the equivalent air length, then the forces in the two would be equal, right? Now this would 4 pi epsilon naught will get cancelled. You can see that equivalent air length as you can see is root epsilon r into the medium length. If somebody has given you Rm, then you can find the equivalent air length as root epsilon r into Rm. That's the equivalent air length. Got me? What equivalent air length means? What would be the separation between the two charges so that they exert the same force when they are kept in air? That's the equivalent air length. Now, this is important. This is important to understand. So the equivalent air length, if Rm is the separation in the medium, then the equivalent air length would be the root epsilon r for the medium, root epsilon r for the medium into Rm, medium length, right? Now, suppose there are two charges separated by a distance r, kept in air, and part of the separation between the two charges is a medium, say thickness T, and of relative permittivity epsilon r, So part of the separation between the two charges is air, part is this medium, and I still want to be able to compute the force between the two charges, right? So what I do is I try and convert every length to an equivalent air length, right? So T in this medium can be converted into T in air. This T in the medium can be converted into T in air by saying root epsilon r into T in the medium. The separation in the medium gets converted into equivalent separation in air by multiplying by root epsilon r, as you can see here, right? So which means now, so there is r minus T, which is actual air length, and equivalent air length. Yes or no? Right. So then that means now it's as if I can imagine both the charges to be kept in air. I can imagine both the charges to be kept in air and separated by a distance. This is r minus T plus T root epsilon r. That's the separation that I can conceive of between the two charges. This is the equivalent air separation. This is the equivalent air separation between the two charges, right? And now if you have to compute the force between the two charges, the force between the two charges would be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 by d squared, which is the equivalent air length, R minus T is this, which was already air, and T units of the medium is like root epsilon R times T of air. Yes or no? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so that's fine. Then T squared epsilon R. That's fine. R squared, D squared is what we'll get in the denominator, isn't it? So that will become T squared epsilon R, which is what you expect. Square ho jabe na ota. Right? Right. Let me look at 1 point charge. Say Captain Air. And if not Captain Air, kept in some other medium, you know what to do. Right? You'll have a factor epsilon R multiplied with epsilon naught to get the forces. Now, this charge in its surroundings produces a region where other test charges could experience a force, right? So, this region surrounding this test charge, could be characterized, means there could be a vector associated with every point of this region. Referred to this charge Q, there could be a vector associated with every point of this region. Now, if there is a point P, and I have a unit positive test charge placed at P, when placed at P, then the force experienced by this unit positive test charge at P, is defined as the intensity of the electric field produced by Q. So if I kept a unit positive test charge, then this unit positive test charge will experience a force, say kq q naught by r squared into, say this was r and this was r cap, would experience a force kq q naught by r squared, which is like kq by into r cap, which is like kq by r squared, because q naught is 1, right? So with every p of this region, you can define a vector kq by r squared into r cap. Yes or no? Nahi kya? Nahi samajh mein aa raha. With every point, you can define a vector of this kind, kq by r squared into r cap, and what this vector tells you is the force experienced by a unit positive test charge when placed at that point. This quantity is called the intensity of the electric field at that point. Kq by r squared into r cap is the intensity of the electric field when placed at that point. If Q is positive, Q naught will experience repulsion and will experience a force like this. But if Q is negative, this quantity would be opposite r cap and the force will be attractive. So that's all right. That's the intensity at P. With every P surrounding Q, the intensity will be different because you will have a different r cap and a different r. Right? Yes or no? So that's the intensity of the electric field at any point P of this region surrounded by a point test charge Q. When a test charge is placed at this point, instantly this electric field, this is the description of that electric field. This electric field immediately spreads out in the entire surrounding region at the speed of light. It happens at the speed of light. It happens very quickly. Although the time will still be finite, but very small time. Very small time, instantly, you know, that surrounding region would be infested with the electric field. So this then is the vector description of this region. This is the vector description of that region. If you have knowledge of the electric field at a point, then you know what a unit positive test charge would experience when placed at that point. It would experience a force given by kq by r squared into r cap. Kq by r squared into r cap, that's the force that it would experience, right? If at a point the electric field vector is E, and if you placed a charge, say Q1, then the force experienced by Q1 is going to be Q1 into E. E is the force experienced by a unit positive test charge. So if a charge Q1 is placed at that point, then the force experienced would be Q1 into E. This is force per unit positive charge. So for a charge Q1, the force experience would be Q1 into E. Q1 into E. Right? So if you have knowledge of the electric field at that point, then you know how much force any other charge when placed at that point would experience. It would just be the charge placed at that point into the electric field vector at that point. Right? Yes or no? So this is called electric field, or sometimes also called electric field intensity. Electric field or electric field intensity. It's an inverse square law field. Force experienced is inversely proportional to the square of the distance, right? If there is a charge Q and there is another charge Q1 at a distance R, then the force experienced by Q1, magnitude of the force experience, would be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 by R squared. Right? And this force, line of action of this force that Q1 experiences will always pass through Q, like I said. So in that context, it's all these forces and therefore these intensities at various points. So the intensity at that point would be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q by R squared. That means the intensity at any point, right, is inversely proportional to the square of the distance from the point charge, right? It's an inverse square law field, just like the gravitational field. It's also another inverse square law field where instead of masses you have charges. Instead of masses you have charges. Instead of capital G, universal gravitational constant, you have 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. And henceforth, this 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught we'll designate by the letter K. We'll designate by the letter K. So this will then be like KQ by R squared would be the magnitude of the electric field at a distance R from this charge, which is always directed towards Q and is inversely proportional to the square of the distance from Q. Inversely proportional to the square of the distance from Q. Right? So inverse square law field and central force field. More importantly, it's a central force field. Right? Forces experienced by all other charges in the surrounding region will have their line of action passing through Q, right? And if you remember in work power energy, I told you all central force fields are conservative in character. All central force fields are conservative in character. If they are conservative in character, we can define what's called the potential energy for such regions. For a conservative field, we can define what's called the potential energy. Now, we define, let's say, the potential energy of a unit positive charge. This is a charge Q. All right. Now, there is some point P at a distance R from Q. All right. The force experienced by a unit positive charge when placed at P. Let's say Q is positive. Let's say Q is positive. Then the force experienced by a unit positive charge when placed at this point is going to be kq by r square, which is the value of the electric field at that point. The force experienced by a unit positive test charge when placed at this point is the force experienced by a unit positive charge when placed at that point is going to be kq by r squared as shown, right? How have we defined potential energy? How have we defined potential energy? So first of all, I defined what's called potential at a point. This is the electric field at that point. Potential at a point is the potential energy of a unit positive test charge at that point. So when I say potential at P, that's the potential energy of a unit positive test charge at P. Unit positive test charge at P. Potential energy of a unit positive test charge at P. So this positive test charge, unit positive test charge at P will have a certain potential energy when placed at P. Potential energy because of the electric field produced by Q, because it's exposed to forces produced by Q, Because of that, a test charge, a unit positive test charge will subscribe to a value of potential energy at that point, right? Now, say if you imagine this unit positive test charge to move from P to Q by a small separation dr, this unit positive test charge when moved from P to Q. So when I say potential, it only means potential energy of a unit positive test charge. Potential at a point means potential energy of a unit positive test charge when placed at that point, right? So when a unit positive test charge moves from P to Q, it experiences a force kq by r squared because of this, right? The force experienced by a unit positive test charge would be kq by r squared. That's a force experience. That means force experience because of the electric field of Q. The work done by the electric field, would be this into dr. That's the work done by the electric field. Force into displacement, that's the work done by the electric field, right? And work done by the forces of the field would be negative of the change in potential energy. In this case, potential energy is really potential because I'm talking of a unit positive test charge. So if U was the potential at P, that means potential energy of a unit positive test charge at P, and du was the change in potential energy from P to Q, and if du was the change in potential energy from P to Q, then the change in potential energy is given by negative of the work done by the electric field. Realize this was the definition of potential energy. The change in potential energy is negative of the work done by the forces of the field. That's how I define change in potential energy from P to Q. In this case, this potential energy U is actually the change in potential because I'm talking of a unit positive charge going from P to Q. Work done on a unit positive test charge. Potential energy of a unit positive test charge would be the potential, right? Yes or no? Huh? So du would be minus kq by r squared, where du is the change in potential. Because I'm talking of a unit positive test charge, potential energy is like potential. Now, if the particle goes from P to infinity, that means when r changes from some r to infinity, u changes from u at r, u at this point would be u at r to u at infinity, u changes from u at r u at r to u at infinity से. ठीक है, नहीं समझ में आया? देखो, यूनिट पॉजिटिव टेस्ट चार्ज p से q में जाता है, वो कितना फोर्स एक्सपीरियंस करता है? k q by r square. वर्क डन बाय दिस फोर्स कितना होगा? वर्क डन बाय द फोर्सेस ऑफ द फील्ड ये होगा. But work done by the forces of the field, negative of the work done by the forces of the field would be change in potential, that is change in potential energy of the unit positive test charge. यही होता है ना? अब now, if the particle goes from p to infinity, that means from r equal to r equal to infinity, infinity तक जाता है. What is the? Then u changes from u at this point, u at r to u at infinity. U changes from u at r to u at infinity. Got me? So this gives me like u at infinity minus u at r. That's the left hand side. U at infinity minus u at r is minus coming out. When you integrate kq by r squared, you get minus kq by r. When you integrate kq by r squared, you get minus kq by r. So that will make it plus kq by r, where r runs from r to infinity. R runs from r to infinity. Yes or no? When you supply the limits, which is like kq into, say, 1 by infinity minus 1 by r, right? Which is like 1 by infinity is like a 0. So that's like a minus kq by r. That means the difference in potentials between infinity and a distance r from this point charge, the difference in potentials, potential means potential energy of a unit positive test charge, is going to be minus kq by r. Q is the charge which has produced that region whose electric field and potentials we are computing. We are computing the potentials produced by the charge q in the surrounding region. These are potentials produced by charge q in its surroundings, right? Now, potential or potential energy are not absolutes, and we can always give a specific value to potential energy or potential at a certain point of this region. We can choose to call the potential at infinity to be 0. We can decide. If you don't like that, you can choose to call potential energy at infinity to be minus 21 also. What we do is, we define potential energy at infinity to be 0 for a point charge produced by a point charge. We choose this. This is our choice of reference. And that gives us potential energy at a distance r as kq by r. Potential at a distance r is kq by r. Right? So at a distance r, you can define a number called u. You can define a vector kq by r squared whose direction is like this. There is a vector description at this point because of this charge q. There is a scalar description at this point because of this charge q. Right? This scalar description is what? The potential at this point, which is the potential energy of a unit positive test charge when placed at this point. This electric field at this point is what? That's a force experienced by a unit positive test charge because of q when placed at this point. Right? So there is, at every point p, there is a vector associated and there is a number associated. There is a scalar associated. This scalar is the potential at that point. This vector is the electric field at that point. Right? Now, if you know the potential at a point, at a point p, if you knew that the potential was u, then this potential at that point of the electric field, is the potential energy of a unit positive test charge when placed at that point, right? So if there is a charge, say Q1, when placed at P, it will have potential energy Q1 into U. A unit positive test charge has potential energy U at P, which is the potential at that point, right? But if there is a charge Q1 placed at that point, then its potential energy is going to be Q1 into potential energy per unit charge. This is potential energy per unit charge into charge will give me the potential energy of some other charge when placed at this point, right? Potentials are important. If you have knowledge of potentials, then you can multiply by the corresponding charge to get the corresponding potential energy. This is what happens. Clear? So essentially, if I have a point charge Q, then there is a region surrounding it, and in the region surrounding it, with every point you can define two numbers. There is a scalar description of that region, there is a vector description of that region. The vector description of that region at a given point P at a distance r is the electric field kq by r square at that point. It will have a direction, which is the force experienced by a unit positive test charge when placed at this point, right? And there is a scalar that you can associate with this point. The scalar ur is given by kq by r, which is the potential at this point, which is also the potential energy of a unit positive test charge when placed at this point, right? Now, this is the electric field and potentials. This is the electric field and potentials produced by a point charge, 1 point charge, produced by 1 point charge. But if you had discrete collection of point charges, say Q1, Q2, Q3, Qn, so discrete collection of point charges, then each one of them will produce in the surrounding region, an electric field and a potential, right? So if I have a point P at a distance, say r1 from Q1, at a distance r2 from Q2, at a distance r3 from Q3, at a distance rn from Qn, then the total potential at P is going to be the sum of the potentials because of individual charges. So the total potential at P is going to be kq1 by r1 plus kq2 by r2 plus kqn by rn. Now, if at P the electric field vector because of Q1 was E1, right? At P there is an electric field produced by Q1, kq1 by r1 squared into say r1 cap. There is an electric field produced by Q2, which is kq2 squared by r2 into r2 cap, and so on and so forth, right? So if the electric fields produced by various charges at P is E1, E2, etc., then the net electric field at P is going to be the superimposition of these electric fields, Vector sum of these electric fields will give me the net electric field at P. So it's like if you place a unit positive test charge at P, then the force that it will experience is E. The potential energy that it will have is the potential at P, which will be the algebraic sum of the potentials produced by various charges. This is what it means. Now, there is another take on potential at a point, and I must tell you that as well. And you know, they often talk of, you know, the unit of charge is a coulomb, but a coulomb is a humongous unit of charge. Practically, we talk of microcoulombs, which is 10 to power minus 6 coulombs, or nanocoulombs, which is 10 to power minus 9 coulombs, or picocoulombs, which is 10 to the power minus 12 coulombs, and so on and so forth. Those are practical units of charge. 1 coulomb of charge is humongous. But that's all right. To study physics, if you in a physics book it's written coulomb, that's okay to do, not a problem. But in real life, you won't find coulombs of charge. You'll find nanocoulombs of charge or picocoulombs of charge. Let me give you another perspective to potential. Potential at a point due to a point charge q. Due to a point charge q. There is a point charge q placed at this point, and I want to find the potential at a point p. I want to find the potential at a point p, distance r from this point charge. Potential at a point p at a distance r from this point charge. Write down. So there is an electric field produced by p, and at every produced by q, and at every point of this electric field there is also going to be a potential at that point of this electric field. So this electric field at every point has a potential, which is the potential energy of a unit positive test charge at that point. Now write down potential at a point of an electric field, potential at a point p of an electric field is the amount of work done by an external agent to bring a unit positive test charge, from infinity to that point without adding kinetic energy, to the test charge, Write down. Which means if this external agent is transporting, a unit positive test charge from infinity to p without adding kinetic energy, infinity to p without adding kinetic energy, it means that the speed of the test charge remains constant and the test charge is unaccelerated. Which in turn means during the transport, the force applied by the external agent must exactly balance applied by the external agent must be equal in magnitude, the force applied by the external agent must be equal in magnitude and opposite in direction to the force of the electric field. Force because of the electric field. Causing the net force to be zero. You have to tell me what I said. Opposite in direction, causing the net force on it, I'll explain also, causing the net force to be zero, the test charge remaining unaccelerated. I'll tell you what it means. What it means is, see, this is a point charge Q. This is a point charge Q. And it's producing in its surroundings an electric field, a region where another test charge can experience a force. And at every point P of this region, you can define the electric field intensity at that point, which is the force experienced by a unit positive test charge when placed at that point. Right? You can do that. Now, I'm defining a scalar at this point. So electric field at that point was a vector. I'm defining a scalar at that point. What is that scalar? I'm saying, hey, I have a unit positive test charge. And I have an external agent. All right. External agent means an external force. So this charge Q naught will experience force because of the electric field of Q and because of the external agent, right? At any given instant of time. Now this external agent is taking this unit positive test charge from infinity to P, but in a manner that it is not adding kinetic energy to the particle. Now, what is it that I mean by not adding kinetic energy to the particle? So, at any given instant of time, look, if this is the force because of the external agent, at a certain point, at a certain intermediate point, when the test charge is being transported, if this is the force because of the external agent, which is transporting the charge from infinity to P, and this is the force because of the field, then these two forces would be oppositely directed and will be equal in magnitude. Now, if this happens, then the particle will remain unaccelerated, right? Because net force is zero, particle will remain unaccelerated. Now, if it is remaining unaccelerated, that means its velocity remains constant, right? It means velocity remains constant. Now, if its velocity remains constant, it means its kinetic energy is preserved. Right? And when will the kinetic energy be preserved? If at all times the force because of the field produced by Q exactly balances the force because of the externally applied force. And if I'm moving the test charge from infinity to this point, keeping in mind dynamically that the externally applied force exactly balances the forces of the field, then the particle will remain unaccelerated and the constancy of kinetic energy will be maintained. Yes or no? Yes, it's not a constant force. Because the force because of the field produced by Q is a variable force. At different distances from Q, this force because of the field will be different. Yes or no? Nahi samajh mein aaya? Right? So the externally applied force has to sense the value of the force because of the field at this point. It will then dynamically apply the same force in the opposite direction. You can't change this. But the externally applied force can be dynamically varied so as to exactly counter the force because of the field, maintaining the particle unaccelerated at all times. Right? This is how I'm transporting a unit positive charge from infinity to P. Right? So it is the work done by the external agent. So what is the potential at the point P? Potential at the point P, U at P, potential at the point P is the work done by the external agent. This is work done by the external agent to move the charge, test charge, from infinity to P, maintaining kinetic energy constant. Maintaining kinetic energy constant. That's the potential at the point P. The work done by the external agent in moving a unit positive test charge from infinity to P, maintaining constant kinetic energy. Maintaining constant kinetic energy. When I am moving the test charge from infinity to P, would you want to believe that if at some instant this was the displacement of the particle dx in this direction, then the work done by the external agent would be negative of the work done by the field? What is the work done by the external agent? The work done by the external agent would be F external into dx. What is the work done by the field? Forces of the field would be force of the field into dx. Angle between force of the field and dx is 180 degrees minus the force of the field into dx. Yes or no? Do you understand this? This is the magnitude of the force of the field. This is the displacement. So what's the work done by this? Force of the field into dx with a minus sign because they are oppositely. But this is the same as this. So do you realize work done by the external agent would be negative of the work done by the field? Work done by the external agent will be negative, so that the net work done is 0. If the net work done is 0, change in kinetic energy will be 0. Yes or no? From work energy theorem, right? Work done by the external agent would be negative of the work done by the field. Net work done on the particle, on the test charge, would be what? Work done by the external agent plus work done by the field. That would be the net work done by the external agent plus the field. Net work done on the test charge. This is the net work done on the test charge, which is 0. That means the net work done on the test charge is change in kinetic energy. D of kinetic energy is 0. Change in kinetic energy is 0 means kinetic energy is constant. Yes or no? So to maintain kinetic energy constant, work done by the external agent must be negative of the work done by the field from instant to instant. Yes or no? Got me? Confused? No, no? So which means now, so the work done by the external agent to transport a unit positive charge from infinity to P, maintaining the kinetic energy constant, would be defined as the potential at the point P, would be defined as the potential at that point P produced by this point charge Q. Clear? Now, so can I say work done by the external agent will be negative of the work done by the field? Work done by the external agent would be negative of the work done by the field. So this is negative of the work done by the field in transporting a unit positive charge from infinity to P, maintaining kinetic energy constant. Can I say this? Negative of the work done by the field from infinity to P. Yes or no? So now I am forgetting all about the external agent. I now brought in the field. I brought in the field. Now look, so this was the point charge Q. This is the point P at a distance r where we want to compute the potential, right? And how do I compute the potential? If from infinity to P I transport a unit positive test charge without accelerating, then negative of the work done by the forces of the field from infinity to P, right? When this point charge is positive test charge is transported from infinity to P, there is a certain amount of work done by the forces of the field. Negative of the work done by the forces of the field will be the potential at the point P, right? So now think of it, when during the process of this transport from infinity to P, say this was the force of the field at an intermediate point, force of the field at an intermediate point, this was the displacement dx leftwards at some point, right, from infinity to P. But if the particle was transported from P to infinity, then at this point the displacement would be in this direction. Displacement dr would be in this direction, where dr would be minus dx. Dr would be minus dx. Yes or no? Do you realize then that to transport from infinity to P, the work done by the field would be negative of the work done if the particle was transported from P to infinity? Yes or no? If the particle was transported from infinity to P, the work done was by the field was something. But when the particle was transported from P to infinity, the work done by the field would have been negative of that. Yes or no? Because the value of the force of the field remains the same, whether you are going from right to left or left to right. The value of the force of the field, but the direction of displacements will change. That means the work done by the field from infinity to P would be negative of the work done by the field from P to infinity, because the value of the force of the field is remaining the same, only the direction of the displacement is changing. Can I say all of it? So which means work done by the forces of the field from infinity to P would be negative of the work done by the field from P to infinity, and that minus sign and this minus sign will cancel off, right? So this would be work done by the forces of the field from infinity to P, keeping kinetic energy constant. From P to infinity, keeping kinetic energy constant. Pakka na? All of you understand whatever I am saying? Huh? Which means, if the particle goes from P to infinity, then the total work done by the forces of the field will give me the potential at the point. Do you understand? As simple as this. How do you compute the potential at the point P? The work done by the forces of the field when the particle goes from P to infinity. That will be the potential at the point P. It all started with the work done by an external agent to transport a unit positive test charge from infinity to P without adding kinetic energy. And what did it reduce to? It reduced to the amount of work done by the field when the particle goes from P to infinity. So if I compute this, I would know the potential at the point P. If I compute this, I would know the potential at the point P. Clear now? Right? Now, let me do this calculation. Can I wipe this off? This is a point charge Q, and I want to compute the potential at a point P because of this charge Q at a distance R. Work done by the forces of the field from P to infinity, right? So during this transport, there is an intermediate point M where the test charge was, right? Say at a distance x from Q, then this test charge will experience a force kq by x squared at this point, to the right. Yes or no? Now, to undergo a displacement dx to the right, what is the work? This is the force of the field. So work done by this force will be the work done by the field. This is the force because of the field produced by Q. So work done by this force is referred to as the work done by the field, right? So work done by the field for this infinitesimally small displacement is going to be what? Kq by x squared into dx. That's the work done by the field. And the total work done by the field this is the field, would be sum of all of this, where x runs from R to infinity. X runs from R to infinity. And that will be defined as the potential at the point P. That will be defined as the potential at the point P. Let's do this calculation and see how much it turns out to be, right? If you integrate 1 by x squared, you get minus 1 by x. So this then turns out to be minus kq into 1 by x. X runs from R to infinity, right? Which is like minus kq into 1 by infinity minus 1 by r, which is like a kq by r, which is what you expect. What calculations did I perform here? Eventually माइनस क्यों होगा? अरे ये डायरेक्शन ऑफ फोर्स है, ये डायरेक्शन ऑफ डिस्प्लेसमेंट है. कौन पुश कर रहा है? फील्ड. वर्क डन बाय द फील्ड, नॉट द वर्क डन बाय द एजेंट. वर्क डन बाय द एजेंट would have been different. Work done by the field would have been force of the field into the displacement. वो सारा तो कैलकुलेशन इसीलिए किया था. It reduced to this. In terms of the field, this is what it reduced to. Potential at the point kq by r. पूछ लो भाई, पूछ लो, कंफ्यूज मत हो. ये कॉन्सेप्ट वीक रह जाएगा तो आगे कुछ नहीं समझोगे. मेरे से 1000 चीज पूछ लो अभी. आई विल नॉट बी एवर्स टू आंसर इट. डू यू वांट मी टू गो ओवर दिस अगेन? Right, we use the electric field. This time I told you this is another perspective of the potential at the point P. I start with defining potential at the point P as the amount of work done in transporting a unit positive charge from infinity to P in an unaccelerated manner. kq by r squared. Electric field at a distance r is going to be kq by r squared. हाँ, वो तो किया ही था. मतलब दोनों पर्सपेक्टिव समझना तो होगा ही. कंपलसरी है यार, जो पढ़ रहे हैं वो सब कंपलसरी है. यू नो, समझना दोनों ही होगा. हम वापस समझा सकते हैं. ओके, यू वांट मी टू गो ओवर दिस अगेन, राइट? आई विल डू दैट, डोंट वरी. कोई इश्यू नहीं है, प्लीज, बिकॉज वी कैन एक्सेलरेट लेटर ऑन. अभी लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड द रूडिमेंट सो दैट यू नो दिस पार्ट डजंट रिमेन वीक. आई विल एक्सप्लेन, डोंट वरी. वापस समझा देता. देखो बेटा, सिंपल सा चीज है, ठीक है? There is a test charge Q. Okay, there is a test charge Q. I've already told you the definition of the electric field at a certain point because of this test charge. Now, at a certain point P, distance r from this test charge, I'm defining potential at this point, right? I'm defining potential at P. कैसे define कर रहे हैं? How am I defining potential at P? Say U at R. How am I defining? I start with a unit positive test charge. I start with a, hello, you asked me to repeat, you have to listen to me now, right? I start with a unit positive test charge, right? And I have an external agent. I have an external agent which is transporting this unit positive test charge from infinity to in an unaccelerated manner, right? Now, this external agent, at any given instant of time, it applies a force F external, and there is a force of the field because which is F field. F field. All right. Now, the external agent makes sure that the particle is unaccelerated. How can it cause the particle to be unaccelerated? If at all times the externally applied force balances the force of the field, right? Now, we define the potential at R as the amount of work done by the external agent to transport a unit positive test charge from infinity to P, kinetic energy constant. What would cause the kinetic energy to be constant? If at all times, if at all instants, the dynamically varying externally applied force balances the force because of the field. Who produces that field? This point charge is producing that field. This is an outside agent. At all times it is causing the particle to remain unaccelerated, right? Okay. Ab dekho. During this transport, would you want to believe that the work done by the external agent would be negative of the work done by the field? Because if the displacement is in this direction, then for this field, the angle between force and displacement is 180 degrees. For this force, angle between force and displacement is 0 degrees. Very clearly, right? So can I say that the work done by the external agent would have to be negative of the work done by the field, so that the net work done by the external agent and the field is 0? Why should that be 0? From work energy theorem, only if that is 0, kinetic energy will remain constant, right? Work done by all forces put together is change in kinetic energy. Work done by external agent plus work done by the field must be 0, because that is change in kinetic energy, right? So work done by the external agent would be negative of the work done by the field from infinity to p. ठीक है, राइट? अब सोचो, अब एक्सटर्नल एजेंट का खेला भूल जाओ एक बार. अब हमको एक्सटर्नल एजेंट से कोई मतलब नहीं है. I just want to compute the work done by the forces of the field when the particle is transported from infinity to p. ठीक है? अब सोचिए आप लोग, whether I am going from infinity to p or p to infinity, if I come across a point, the direction of the force of the field will remain the same. It will not depend on the direction in which the charge is being transported. Yes or no? The direction of the force of the field will not depend on the direction in which the charge is being transported, right? Which means if the particle is transported from infinity to p, right? If the displacement is a dx leftwards in this direction, then there is a certain amount of work done by the force of the field. When I'm going from infinity to p, my displacements are dx to the left. But when I'm going from p to infinity, my displacements dy's are to the right. Dy's are equal in magnitude but oppositely directed to dx. So that means, so the work done by the field to go from infinity to p would be negative of the work done by the field to go from p to infinity, because the forces have remained the same, only the direction of displacements have changed, right? So the work done by the field from infinity to p would be negative of the work done by the field from p to infinity. खाली displacements का ही तो direction change हुआ है, forces तो same रहे हर जगह. So this is negative of the work done by the field from p to infinity. Infinity to p से जो work है उसका negative of the work done is from p to infinity by the field. Clear ना? So this is work done by the forces of the field from p to infinity. From p to infinity. Yes or no? यहां तक समझ में आया? अब देखो. So this is the point charge q. And what is it that I'm trying to do? At a point p, distance r from q, I want to compute the potential. And what needs to be done to compute the potential? This needs to be done to compute the potential at r. Work done by the field to when the particle goes from p to infinity. When the particle goes from p to infinity. Ab socho. While the particle is going from p to infinity, there is an intermediate point, say m, that it encounters, right? And this point is at a distance x from the point charge q. What is the direction of the force? Let's say the force of the field would be kq by x squared. That's the force of the field. Now to get an additional displacement dx to the right, what is the work done by the field? Because now I'm going from p to infinity as is suggested here, right? Work done by the field is what? Kq by x squared into dx. That's the work done by the field. The total work done by the field would be the potential at the point P, where x runs from r to infinity. That will be the potential at the point P. This is how, this is what it boils down to. This is what it gets. This is the definition, but it reduces to this. Instead of looking at the work done by the external agent, one could look at the work done by the field from P to infinity. So this then on integration you would have seen is kq by r. That's a potential at the point P. So kq by r, the potential because of a point charge, is the amount of work done in transporting a unit positive charge from infinity to P without adding kinetic energy to the particle, and it reduces to this number kq by r. Bolo, ठीक है ना? By the field, negative of the work done by the field, not the work done by the external agent. Now this is another view. That's how potential energy is defined. That's how potential energy is defined. না so essentially essentially এটা সেমই আছে দেখো ব্যাপারটা বলছি the total work done by the field from P to infinity, the total work done by the field from P to infinity is actually negative of the change in potential energy, is negative of the change in potential energy. This is u at infinity minus u at P. বুঝতে পেরেছো? This is the fundamental definition. আমরা কি ধরছি u at infinity to be 0. So this will become u at P equals work done by the field, which is kq by r. Work done, see, this is all potential energy. বুঝতে পেরেছিস ব্যাপারটা? u at infinity is 0. So negative of the change in potential energy is the work done. Confusion আছে কি এখনো? Sure তো? এ ভাই पूछ ले. Confusion है दोस्त? नहीं ना? हाँ बोल. अच्छा, तो एक बात बता मेरे को कि एक कांस्टेंट वेलोसिटी से पार्टिकल मूव नहीं कर सकता है? तो नहीं, अब दो चीज है ना, ऐसा कोई जरूरी नहीं है, तुम अज्यूम कर लो कि है, पर उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. दूसरा चीज, it is like it has a very very small velocity, very small velocity, which means, and that is maintained constant. So having very very small velocity मतलब हुआ कि we call that in physics quasi-static. We call that quasi-static. So very slowly it is being moved. मतलब its velocity is very very small at all times. ये assume कर रहे हैं, पर उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. तुम constant velocity से move करो, फिर last में उस constant velocity को zero पकड़ लो, which becomes a special case of this. So that does not change our computations. समझ गई बात? Please ask more questions. समझ लो भाई, ये गड़बड़ होने से सब गड़बड़ हो जाएगा. पूछ सकते हो मेरे से. Potential at a point P is the amount of work done in bringing a unit positive test charge from infinity to P by an external agent in an unaccelerated manner. In an unaccelerated manner. একই পড়ে, এই তো দেখ একই তো পড়ছে. একই কিছুই না ভাই. আচ্ছা একটা জিনিস ভাব, যে একটা পয়েন্ট চার্জ আছে, হ্যাঁ, এই একটা পয়েন্ট আছে, এইখানে এখন Q naught equal to 1 coulomb রাখলাম, এখানে Q naught equal to 20 coulombs রাখলাম, এখানে Q naught equal to minus 30 coulombs রাখলাম, হ্যাঁ, সবার জন্য তো ফোর্স বার করতে হবে এই পয়েন্টে. এইখানে ওই ফর্মুলাতে Q naught by r squared Q naught 1 দেবো, Q naught by r squared Q naught 20 দেবো, হ্যাঁ. So what we do is, we say all right, we will standardize the force on a unit positive test charge at every point. So if I have knowledge of the electric field at that point, which is essentially the force on a unit positive test charge when placed at that point, then if there is any other charge when placed at P, it will experience a force Q into E, because E represents force per unit charge. So if there is a charge Q kept at that point, it will experience a force Q into E. আর কিছুই না. Electric field is force per unit charge. So if there is 20 coulombs of charge, you multiply E by 20. I have not run out of patience. You can ask me questions. So I repeat, the electric field at any point is the amount of force experienced by a unit positive test charge when placed at that point. It's a vector quantity. It has a direction. That's a vector representation of the region of an electric field. It's a vector representation of the region of an electric field. There is a scalar representation of that region, which is the potential at a point, which is the amount of work done in bringing a unit positive test charge from infinity to that point of the electric field, right? Which is also called the potential energy of a unit positive test charge when placed at that point. So if you use the potential at a point, then that's the potential energy of a unit positive test charge at that point. Now, if there is a 20 microcoulombs placed at that point, then the potential energy would be 20 U. And that will give me the amount of work done in bringing 20 coulombs of charge from infinity to that point. So, you know, how is that useful? So, if I have, say, I'm creating a system of discrete charges, say, I'm creating a system of discrete charges, say Q1, Q2, Q3, Qn. Then, you know, there is potential energy associated with this system. With this entire system, there is potential energy, which means the amount of work that must be done to put these charges in place. Let me take simpler cases first. Let me take, say, 3 charges placed at the vertices of a triangle. How much of work must be done to assemble these 3 charges? How much of work must be done to assemble these 3 charges at the vertices of a triangle? At the vertices of a triangle. মানে এই পজিশনে আনতে হবে, ইকুইলিব্রিয়ামেই থাকে, মানে ইকুইলিব্রিয়াম ব্যাপারই নেই এখানে। এই পজিশনে আনতে গেলে কত ওয়ার্ক করতে হবে without adding kinetic energy to the system? How much of work must be done? So this is a charge placed here, this is a charge placed here, this is a charge placed here, this is R12, this is R23, this is R31. All right. Now, first of all, there is nothing. And I have to bring a test charge from infinity to A. There is no electric field at all. There is no electric field at all. And I have to bring a charge from infinity to A. All right. If I have to bring a charge from infinity to A without adding kinetic energy to this charge, how much of work has to be done? 0. Kinetic energy भी नहीं add कर रहे हो, you are not even countering the forces of field because there is no field. खुद के फील्ड के कारण कोई चार्ज नहीं फोर्स एक्सपीरियंस करता, किसी और के फील्ड के कारण एक्सपीरियंस करेगा, ठीक है? Got me, na? So initially, to bring a charge from infinity to A, the work done is 0. Yes or no? Now, fix A in place. Fix A in place. Now what I do is, at B, I want to bring from infinity to B, a charge Q2. A charge Q2. I want to calculate the work done in bringing a charge Q2 from infinity to B. But this time, when I'm bringing Q2 from infinity to B, there is an electric field of A. There is an electric field at A, produced by Q1. There is an electric field produced by Q1. So the work done by the field is not 0. Because there is a non-zero field that exists because of Q1. Now, one thing. Because of Q1, what's the potential at B because of Q1? K, this distance is R12. K, Q1 by R12 is the potential at B because of Q1. Yes or no? K, Q1 by R12. Which is the amount of work done in bringing a unit positive charge from infinity to B. This is the work done in bringing a unit positive charge from infinity to B. But this time bringing a charge Q2. So what's the work done W2? UB into Q2. UB into Q2 is the amount of work done in bringing a charge from infinity to B. Yes or no? Which is like UB is this. So this becomes K Q1 Q2 by R12. K Q1 Q2 by R12 is the amount of work done. Right? আমি বলছি to bring Q1 to A, no work was done. Now you've brought Q1 to A. You're fixing Q1. ठीक है? And you want to bring Q2 from infinity to B. Now, what is the entity that is producing an electric field when you're transporting Q2 from infinity to B? Q1. What's the potential at B because of Q1? KQ1 by R12. Which means what? It is the amount of work done in bringing a unit positive charge from infinity to B. Now to bring a charge Q2 from infinity to B, how much of work done would be? QB into U2, which is this, right? So now I have brought B in place. Yes or no? Is it getting very difficult? Nahi na? Now at C, this is R. I want to bring C3. This is R23, this is R31. Now, if I have to bring Q3 from infinity to C, there is an electric field because of Q1 and because of Q2, which I have to counter. The potential at C is what? Potential because of Q1, which is KQ1 by R31, plus potential at C because of Q2, which is KQ2 by R23. That's the potential at C, which is the amount of work done in bringing a unit positive charge from infinity to C. So then the work done W3 to bring Q3 from infinity to C is going to be potential at C, which is the work done on a unit positive test charge. So on a charge Q3, this would be the work done. UC into Q3. Yes or no? Which is K Q1 Q3 by, UC is this, K Q1 by R31 plus K Q2 by R23 into Q3. That's the work done. So in 3 stages, first you brought charge Q1 from infinity to A. The work done was 0 because there was no electric field, nothing. And then you fixed A. You calculated the potential at B, which was the amount of work done in bringing a unit positive charge from infinity to B, which is like KQ1 by R12. And you multiplied it with the charge Q2 to get the work done in bringing Q2 from infinity to B. Then you calculated the potential at C. Now potential at C was because of Q1 and because of Q2. Because of Q1 is KQ1 by R31. Because of Q2 it was KQ2 by R23. And multiplied that with the charge Q3. You got the amount of work done to bring Q3 from infinity to C. That means the total work done to assemble this configuration was W1, which was 0 to bring Q1, plus W2 plus W3. W1 was for bringing Q1, W2 was for bringing Q2, and W3 was for bringing Q3. Potential at B. No, it's not potential at what? Huh? Right. No, the potential at B is going to be KQ1 by R12. That's the potential at B. Ye to work done, WT is the work done to bring a charge from infinity, unit positive charge, to bring a charge Q2 from infinity to B. That's W2. Why should that be looked upon as the potential? Potential at B is KQ1 by R12. नहीं समझ में आ रहा है. Can I wipe this off? कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. तुम पहले B ले आओ, बाद में A ले आओ, फिर C ले आओ, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. नहीं, it's not an obvious answer. His question is नहीं, it's not obvious. His question is not irrelevant. नहीं बेटा, कोई फर्क नहीं, तुम कैलकुलेट करके देख लेना, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. किसी भी ऑर्डर में ABC को ले आओ, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. तुम पहले B ले आओ. You want me to do that calculation and show it to you? I can do that. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So essentially, so suppose, देखो भाई, don't get confused, no? There is a charge Q equal to 2 coulombs, which is producing an electric field in its surroundings. And at a certain point P, I place a charge Q naught equal to, say, 4 coulombs at a distance, say, 10 meters from this, at a distance 10 meters from this. This charge will experience, and this is a fixed charge, this is fixed, I keep it fixed by some mechanical means. I keep this charge fixed. Okay, by some mechanical means I keep this charge fixed. Now this charge was originally at rest. Do you realize it will experience repulsion from this charge, and it will race away to infinity? It will race away to infinity. This charge will experience repulsion from this charge, and this charge will race away to infinity. Clear? I want to find the velocity of this charge 4 coulombs at infinity. I want to find the velocity of this charge at infinity. Okay. Look, at P, this charge has, there is a potential at P. What's the potential at P because of this charge? Say Q1, KQ1 by, let's say this is R. KQ1 by R is the potential at the point P because of this charge. Yes or no? KQ1 by R, R is 10 meters, Q1 is 2 coulombs. Clear? Now, that's the potential at P is what? Potential energy of a unit positive charge. Potential at P is potential energy of a unit positive charge, पर यहाँ पे तो Q naught है. So potential energy of this charge would be this. KQ1 by R is the potential energy of a unit positive charge at P. So the potential energy of a charge Q naught would be KQ1 Q naught by R, right? And the particle has no kinetic energy at P. So this is the total mechanical energy. This is the potential energy of Q naught. This is the kinetic energy of P naught at this, right? Now when it races to infinity, at infinity, 0 potential energy and kinetic energy is half mv squared. Kinetic energy is half mv squared. KQ1 by R, this is a charge whose electric influence has caused this charge to race away to infinity. The potential at this point because of this charge is KQ1 by R, which also is the potential energy of a unit positive charge when placed at this point. So potential energy of charge Q naught would be potential at the point P, which is KQ1 by R into Q naught. So this is the total potential energy of Q naught when placed at P, right? It gets converted into kinetic energy at infinity, because at infinity potential energy becomes 0. At this point kinetic energy is 0. So that's conservation of mechanical energy, conservation of mechanical energy.